It is 1 o'clock on Tuesday, October 21st. Madam Clerk, do we have a quorum?
Yes, Mayor.
I will do the Pledge of Allegiance and Invocation. Please rise.
I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
Please bow your heads. Dear Heavenly Father, thank you for this day that you have given us. We come to you today asking for our guidance, for your guidance, wisdom, and support as we begin this meeting to help us make decisions to move our community forward in a positive direction. Be with all of our citizens in the community, but especially be with our first responders and watch over them as they keep us safe. In this we pray, amen. Amen. Up next on the agenda is the minutes. Any changes? I didn't see any. They'll stand as approved, as presented. Public comment. This is a time where we have set aside on the agenda for anyone to come up forward and speak on any item that's not on the agenda. We give you 5 minutes, and please state your name for the record.
Hello, Council. I'm Becca Brinkman with Garden City High School. I'm in attendance today. We've got students who are taking government 3 to 5 hours a week after the school day. They're benefiting from a grant that we received from the National Education Association in collaboration with the City of Garden City. The goal is to create equitable opportunities during the school day where transportation is not a problem. 2 weeks ago, the students participated in an all-day field trip coordinated by the city. It took us to 4 different locations. I think we met with 19 different departments. And a week later, they took some takeaways, things that stayed in their brain even a week later. 38 bullet points of things they learned. They said they attributed 22 action items, things that they were told as youth citizens that they can do today to make an impact. They were introduced to numerous career fields, internship opportunities, as well as youth representation on advisory boards, some of which they've already started applying for and pursuing, which
Excellent.
It's great. While this is just the beginning of this grant opportunity for this year, I want to sincerely give my gratitude for all the departments to make this experience wonderful. Amy and the communications department did a great job at leading the city's efforts and making sure that the public realizes what a great opportunity this is. So thank you.
Thank you very much. Thank you. Anyone else? Moving on to item 7.
Item 7A, Steve Quakenbush, Finney County Historical Society thanks cemetery staff for their assistance during the recent historic cemetery walking tours. And there's a letter and also the funds they raise. They give a portion of those back to the city. So we appreciate the efforts of Finney County Historical Society and all the staff that contributed to planning and all the board members and volunteers that contributed to the acting. 7B through 7I are staff reports. Do you have any questions over those? We'd be happy to try to answer them. Hearing none, 7J is the customary update from Cox on their channel lineup pursuant to their interlocal agreement, or their franchise agreement, I guess, with the city. Item 8, meetings of note. If any of those require RSVPs, please do those through the city clerk's office. Item 9 is the appropriation ordinance, and if approved, it would be ordinance number 2597-2025A.
I make a motion that we approve appropriation ordinance number 2597-2025A. There's been a motion. Is there a second?
A second.
There's been a second. Any discussion on this item? None being, all in favor say aye.
Aye.
Opposed, nay. That item passed.
Item 10A, the governing body is asked to consider and approve the following ordinance regarding the 2025 solid waste utility system improvements. If approved, this would be ordinance number 3028-2025.
Good afternoon.
The city has identified improvement projects to the solid waste utility system, primarily for the acquisition of a new baler for the recycling center, and building improvements to accommodate the new baler, and the purchase of 5 new diesel trash trucks and a 4x4 service truck. To cover the costs associated with these projects, the city will be issuing general obligation bonds. The first step in the process to issue debt is to approve an ordinance to authorize the project. The authority for this authorization is Charter Ordinance number 31 of the city, and Charter Ordinance 31 authorizes the city to issue its general obligation bonds to pay costs of extending, constructing, and improving public utility systems, including the city's solid waste disposal utility system. The alternatives before you today are that you may approve the ordinance as presented, or you may defer to a later date. And staff's recommendation is that the governing body approve the ordinance authorizing the projects to be included in the 2025 general obligation issue. And as a fiscal note, debt service payments for the projects shall be allocated appropriately during the annual budget process and will be included in the solid waste fund budget. The total anticipated principal amount to be issued in the bonds is $1.8 million. Happy to answer any questions you have.
Any questions for Jared? Entertain a motion on this item.
I move that we approve Ordinance 3028-2025.
There's been a motion. Is there a second?
I second.
There's been a second. Any discussion on this item? None being, all in favor say aye.
Aye.
Opposed, nay. That item passed.
Item 10B, the governing body is asked to consider and approve following resolution regarding the 2025 general obligation bond sale. If approved, it would be resolution number 3211-2025.
The governing body is authorized proceeding with the 25 general obligation bond issue by approving ordinance number 3028-2025 for the improvements of the solid waste utility. The next step in the process is consideration and approval of this resolution authorizing the bond sale at 10 a.m. on December 2nd, 2025. Mary Carson, the City Bond Council, prepared the resolution. The alternatives are that the governing body may approve the resolution as presented, or the governing body may defer action to a later date. Recommendation from staff is that the governing body approve the resolution as presented. And as a fiscal note, the debt payments for these projects are budgeted for and will be paid for from the solid waste fund, budget 551-57571, over 5 years beginning in 2026, and the annual debt service for this issuance is estimated to be approximately $430,000 a year.
Any questions for Jared? Entertain a motion on Resolution 3211-2025 then.
I move we approve resolution number 3211-2025.
There's been a motion.
Yes, second.
There's a second. Any discussion on this item? None being, all in favor say aye.
Aye.
Opposed, nay. That item passed.
All right, thank you. And
Thank you.
There you have the calendar. The next time we'll bring something before you will be that December 2nd meeting when we have the results of the bond sale.
Sounds good. Thank you.
Item 12A, the governing body is asked to consider and approve the distribution of the additional round of $200,000 of AFAC funds as recommended by the United Way Subcommittee. Danielle.
Good afternoon, Mayor and Commissioners. Funding for APAC is established in KSA 79-41A04, which creates an alcoholic liquor fund created from alcohol consumption tax funds. State law also prescribes how those monies are to be distributed back to local units of government. For cities with population greater than 6,000, the law sets forth that 1/3 of the money to be credited to the general fund, 1/3 be credited to the Special Parks and Recreation Fund, and 1/3 to special alcohol and drug programs funded by the city treasury. With few treatment and prevention facilities / agencies in Garden City, past awards have largely been made to agencies which have provided an expanded definition of prevention based on accepted categories of prevention strategies. This added flexibility aims to keep funds local. However, with this round of funding, the subcommittee took a more narrow perspective based on the number of applications that provided more direct services as compared to indirect service delivery. On August 19th, 2025, the City Commission authorized an additional round of APAC funding in the amount of $200,000 to support the following initiatives: youth leadership engagement, supporting healthcare providers in the community, co-responder programs, and assisting in the development of private child care options. These areas have been identified in recent City Commission goals. The proposal still needed to identify the connection between the programming and prevention, intervention, education, or treatment, but the goal is that a concerted effort in these areas will help move these initiatives forward and provide some one-time funding opportunities to expand capacity. There were 14 applications submitted totaling $667,401. All of the applications and associated rubric have been attached for reference. A subcommittee comprised of United Way board members met to review the applications and have made the following recommendations. I'm not going to go through each of those, but those recommendations are included in your memo for all 14 of those agencies. It should be noted that while some of the applications received a 0, which this was the first year we were using that new rubric, the subcommittee was clear that those agencies and applications were very valued projects within the community and met the broad interpretation that has been used historically. The subcommittee chose to apply a more narrowed perspective given the nature of the applications submitted this round. Additionally, the subcommittee noted a desire for the City Commission to consider modifying the rubric as it relates to the first scoring criteria, alignment to KSA 79-41A04, from a binary category, either a 0 or 5, with nothing in between, to a continuum of 0 to 5, to recognize the variety of applications submitted from more indirect service delivery to direct service delivery. The subcommittee saw how each application fit the broader definition and would have preferred to be able to award partial points to those applications, which in turn would have allowed for the remainder of the criteria to be considered and scored. Finally, the subcommittee discussed and prioritized applications that were more one-time in nature that aligned with this additional one-time round of funding. While the recommendations for funding don't directly align with the results from the scoring rubric, the rubric did influence the discussion, with preference being given to direct service delivery proposals. 3 alternatives before you this afternoon. The first, the governing body may approve the recommendation to award 4 applicants as recommended by the United Way Board Subcommittee. Alternative 2, the governing body may alter the recommendations. Alternative 3, the governing body may not approve the recommendations and send it back for further review and consideration. Staff recommends the governing body award 4 applicants as recommended by the United Way Board Subcommittee. The fiscal note associated with this is that if approved, the city will expend $200,000 from the AFAC fund for the purposes of funding this additional round. And I should note that if $200,000 is awarded, as you all direct today, there would still be approximately $189,000 in fund balance left at the end of this calendar year. That is an approximation because we've still got one more distribution of AFAC funds coming in later this year, but that's what we anticipate in fund balance if you do move forward with $200,000 in awards. And with that, I'd be happy to answer any questions you all may have.
Any questions for Danielle?
Yeah, so I guess I'm not understanding where you talk about this binary category 0 or 5 and nothing in between, but if you look at the rubric, that there's all the way from 0 to 5. You can do 0, 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. So I guess I'm not understanding that line. I was confused by it.
Yeah. Matt, would you mind pulling up the rubric? I think
it's really small.
Yeah. There's several different categories outlined in this rubric. So that first one is where it delineates the alignment to state statute. We have, the way that we structured that was either 0 points for no alignment or 5 points indicated that it met the intent of it. We didn't allow for points anywhere in between. So projects couldn't get a 1, 2, 3, or 4 in this category. It was either all or nothing. Mm-hmm. And the committee spent a considerable amount of time talking about this. And I think a lot of it was because of the nature of the applications that were received this go around and for this funding round. Because there were more direct service providers included in the application pool, which historically has not been the case. So historically, a very broad definition has been used. And so a lot of their conversation was, I really wish we could have given higher points to some of those more direct services that are being provided for folks in crisis, recognizing that if they could give some of these applications a 1 or 2, they would have, but our criteria just didn't really allow for that, because they did believe at the end of the day all of the applications that were submitted met that broader definition that we've been using for a number of years, I think really with the intent of keeping those funds local, but that was where a considerable amount of the discussion was had.
Yeah, so that was confusing how even if that one, so if they didn't meet that criteria, then you basically zeroed out their application, is that what you're telling me?
Correct. So it was, the way that it was structured is if points weren't awarded for that first section, it was kind of a do not pass, go. We're not going to score the rest of the application, which is why you see some of the zeros in there. If that would have been structured differently, then they would have gotten scores for the rest.
Yeah, because I'm not so sure that, as far as my intent, that wasn't really my intent, whether or not you guys did a 0 or 5 on that, and then you didn't go any further. I mean, the thing that concerned me was where the committee decided to really line it up with the service providers, rather than staying with the 4 categories. These people presented applications based on these 4 different categories. And so I think that made it confusing when the subcommittee then realigns and says, hey, we're going to narrow that to this, from what I understand, now, and I could be wrong, I'm trying to understand, that narrow it to this idea of service providers only, this application go round.
So I think the conversation was a little bit broader than that. So I think the unique part of this application round is that we had applications providing that direct level of service. I think where the committee had a lot of discussion was, a lot of the time these dollars are kind of swimming upstream. It has not been, over the last several years at least, that funds have been awarded to agencies providing direct services. It's been a lot of kind of the indirect swimming upstream. If we can get folks, at this point in a process, then maybe we can do it, really focusing on that prevention work. I think with the set of applications that were received this go around, they felt like they were able to kind of hone in on that a little bit more and provide a little bit more narrow interpretation of the state statute because of the nature of direct service delivery being included in this round of funding, which has not historically, like I said, it just has not historically been the case, at least in the last 5 to 8 years or so. I think there's been a history with this fund, if you go back further than that, where there was some direct service delivery being awarded, but those funds were typically leaving our community, which was another kind of discussion that the group had.
Well, so my last comment or question is so I anticipated that with the rubric, the scoring would make it more transparent. So my understanding would be the organizations and applications that receive the highest score would receive the funding. But that's not the case on this rubric.
Yeah, so the committee talked about that pretty significantly as well. So the highest, there was one project, the Garden City Arts project, received a perfect score. That was the only one that received a perfect score. And the committee talked about that again. I think some of the struggle with that was, I think one of the areas that we need to kind of go back and look at our application is if we award partial funding, what does that mean? And so I think they struggled with that a little bit because a number of these are positions and funding a position. And so they had a lot of discussion about kind of what that meant if partial.
Right, and when you fund a position, though, if it's not sustainable, then it is a one and done. And so that's the thing I think also. But there are 233s on here that receive nothing. Mm-hmm. And so, I mean, when people were asking me, well, how did here the scoring is, and we use the scoring matrix, because again, the whole opportunity was to provide transparency, and then we don't fund those ones that were scoring higher. So that's what I guess I was confused on that. I mean, you've made it clearer on that, but again, this idea of the rubric was to really, hey, let's match our decisions and our funding decisions. And I agree with you as far as knowing whether or not if they could take partial funding, and that might be something you could add. If we only fund partially, would you still be able to complete the project? And I know a lot of grant applications do that, and then they can make the decision to either accept the funds or say we cannot do it without the full funding.
Yeah, I think they spent a lot of time looking at the scoring and having that kind of guide the discussion. But to your point, it wasn't now that we've got the score, we're gonna prioritize that, and we're gonna fill at the top, and we're gonna fill the buckets until we run out of funding. I think they looked at it a little bit more kind of like you would a request for qualifications type process, which it feels a little clunky with the rubric, and kind of using the scoring to guide the conversation, but not have it be kind of the end result provided. But I do think there's some opportunities to clean up kind of the application and the scoring rubric to provide a little bit more clarity too. There were a couple sections. One specifically was the funds spent locally. That section felt a little clunky too. I don't know that it was a determining section of any of the scores and where they ultimately ended up. But it had to do a little bit of interpretation, right? If they've got a budget of, I'm going to make up numbers, I'm not going to use a specific example, but let's say they've got a budget of $200,000. They're requesting $10,000 from this round of funding. Half of that's going to be spent locally. Half of that's not going to be spent locally. They kind of struggle with what to do, right? Do we assume that all the funds are going to be spent locally if they can be, and just having to make some of those assumptions. So I think there are a couple of those things that we can clean up too that will make it, I think, more clear for whoever's reviewing the applications, but also a bit more clear for the agencies.
So does Holcomb receive AFAC funding also, or they do not receive it? Or do we receive their AFAC funding?
Because of the size of Holcomb, they do get AFAC funding, but they don't get it in a special alcohol fund.
I see.
So because they have a population of less than 6,000, instead of them having 3 buckets, they've got 2. Special parks being one of them, and the general fund being the other. So they don't have this kind of 3rd bucket.
They're not shorted a bucket, they just divide it by 2 instead of 3.
Yeah.
Proportionate to the amount they generate in the industry.
Yeah, because that was confusing. I mean, it's not even part of our, I mean, I love their project. I mean, we have an incredible program here, and I know, and Chief Ralston is one who kind of started that here, and so I think it's awesome. But unfortunately, it's not in Garden City, and so that was confusing to me. That we're funding the city of Holcomb. Not that I don't think the project deserves funding, but I mean, is this the bucket, or is this the funding mechanism that they should do it from when we have local programs here in Garden City that receive no funding?
Yeah.
Yet received a pretty high score.
Yeah, and I would say the committee struggled with that. They struggled with, there was also another application that was from outside Finney County.
Right, and that's obviously.
So there were some conversations of, again, should we go back and look at the application and say you've got to be, the programs have to serve Garden City or Finney County? Should there be no?
Well, that would be local
taxing
funding.
entities? That
That would be local funding, and so City of Holcomb's not local unless you're in the City of Holcomb. And the other one from Liberal, obviously Liberal's not Garden City.
Right, yep. Yeah, and so, that could be something too, that as we look at this application going forward, there may be a desire from you all to say, no, we want that to be Garden City and Garden City only, because that was something that got discussed quite a bit. Because we have, historically with these funds, you've got to go back many, many years, but they have left Garden City and Finney County. So I think this is just kind of part of that evolution as we look at what this can look like going forward.
Yeah, I think there's always a lot to talk about with any rubric, but I wonder, at the end of the day, the reality of this AFAC funding is that it is dispersed by our governing body. So I was wondering if we could shift the conversation over to whether or not we want to go ahead with the recommendations or have any of our own. So any thoughts on that?
Any other questions for Danielle? I know Commissioner Ortiz is not here today, but he did have some input on this particular item.
Would you like me to read that?
Yeah, if you would like to.
This is from Commissioner Ortiz, provided for this agenda item in this meeting. Mayor Cessna, after reviewing the 2025 AFAC grant materials and the agenda memo, I believe it is important to ensure the integrity and fairness of our process. The published rubric outlined a 35-point scoring system. Applicants submitted proposals under that framework and should be evaluated accordingly. I want to acknowledge and thank City staff, the United Way Subcommittee, and all applicants for the time and effort invested in this process. My comments are not intended to question that effort, but to ensure our decisions remain consistent with the criteria that were shared with the applicants from the start. Because the final recommendations did not align directly with the scoring results and appear to have incorporated new criteria after scoring, I recommend the following adjustments. Allocate funding to the top 5 scoring applicants according to the original rubric in the screenshot below. And so he has a screenshot that I'll take just a second to describe as best as I can, since not everybody can see it. It repopulates this graph into descending order by score, showing the requested amount received and the score in descending order, with the 35 at the top, the two that received 33 below that, 31, 30, 29, 28, 27 on down. And then in a suggested or recommended scoring award that begins spending down the 200,000 from number one, or the thing that scored 35 points. That receiving 7,500, the next one receiving 50,000, which was its requested amount from ACRF Management Services. The next one receiving $5,000, which was the next highest scoring one, or tied for the next highest scoring one with Kansas Children's Service League. And then 7,500 for Compass Behavioral Health, which was the full balance of their request. And then 62,500 for St. Catherine Hospital, which represents the remaining balance of the 200 after you spend down those on the other four.
Yeah,
okay.
I know the behavioral compass was 75,000.
Correct.
Okay.
And then, so that ends the description of the screenshot. I'll pick up with, this is Commissioner Ortiz's words. This approach restores alignment between the published process and the award outcomes, maintains transparency, and ensures that all applicants are treated equitably under the same criteria. I respectfully request the Commission's consideration of this adjustment. Sincerely, Manny Ortiz.
Any other questions for Danielle or comments from the Commission on this? When I pulled this up, I kind of went along the same lines with Commissioner Unruh and even Commissioner Ortiz, because I was looking at it and looking at the rubric, and I was trying to figure out how you came up with this process, because I was looking at the score and there was no funding, and so I was trying to align that. So with your input on how you provided the information on giving more input on how the committee talked about this, give a little better insight on how they came up with funding for the various agencies that have been funded and that they're recommending. I know it's a new rubric and everything, but I kind of felt if we had the rubric, they had the highest scores, that would have meant that those would have gotten funded from that. But again, it's kind of your advice to the Commission. So that's my input on this process.
And I think the word transparency has been used as kind of this catch-all word. I would say this has been absolutely transparent, which is the reason why you're sitting here debating over, you see the rubric scores. You don't agree with the recommendation of the subcommittee, and staff's in a little bit of a precarious situation. We're trying to represent to you the discussion that was had by the subcommittee, but did not vote. So Danielle's not in a position to defend that decision, just to hopefully you ask questions asking how a group of people arrived at, just like you all know you're a group of people that arrive at a decision. Some of you come at that decision differently, but you still arrive at the decision in the end. So the Commission has the discretion, as it always has, to realign this. I think rather than thinking down the road if a rubric is going to solve, a great rubric is going to solve all your problems, it's not, because at that point in time you have to define what you want the committee to do as well. Mm-hmm. If it's simply score the rubric and walk away without a recommendation, let you all take care of how to allocate the funding after that. For instance, there's an application on here for $200,000. Had that been the top scoring one, I can see differing opinions on whether or not you should award the whole. If that were number one, do you award the whole thing, the $200,000, and nothing else gets funded, or do you begin? So there is some discretion of the subcommittee in making a recommendation that I think the Commission expects them to use, but that doesn't guarantee that you're going to agree with the discretion that they use.
Well, I guess I was just coming from it where I read the memo, I looked at the rubric, I looked at all the applications, I looked at everything and I was trying to figure out until Danielle provided more information on kind of where that came from, because my thought process was, the top score gets the, the most votes gets the high, or the funding and everything. But after what you presented, it made it clearer on what the committee was looking at and how they came up with what they decided. So that was what it got a little, I kept reading through it trying to figure out, was I missing something? But it made a little more sense after you kind of discussed on what the committee discussed and everything. So,
well, and I appreciate the committee doing all the work they did, and I said the recommendations, but I would rather us follow the scoring. I mean, because I think that they took the time to really follow, that they took the time to score these applications, as accurately as they could, and I think they spent, obviously they were judicious, because these scores are, really, when you read back through and you look at the applications, I think, all of these scores were justified. So, I know that Commissioner Ortiz lined these up according to score, and I'd rather do that in order to continue the rubric having a value. Otherwise, if the rubric is just a value and then you can jump around the rubric, then really it doesn't have a value. Because if you don't have to follow the scoring on the rubric, then you can fund individual ones. Then basically, it doesn't really. I don't feel like it was the purpose of what I thought we had intended for the rubric. I think that their committee has made some really good recommendations, understanding that 0 to 5 doesn't have to be one or the other, and so you have a better opportunity, and that way it would maybe eliminate some of the zeros. But my interpretation was that these organizations, either they had nothing right in it, but then I couldn't figure out how you receive a 0 when most of the funding for the zeros were locally. So it makes sense now that you said, hey, if they didn't meet the first criteria, then basically we didn't score the application. But I'd much rather follow the scores so that makes it transparent. And I'm not saying transparency is a whole catch-all. What I'm saying is that I thought that's what we had asked for.
I do wonder, though, that if a 35-point scale shows the whole picture of the effect that an applicant can offer to the community. So, Danielle, I have a question for you, kind of to help me kind of get a better scope of St. Catherine's application and how the committee saw them, like with a 30-point scale, to be moved to the top to have that much funding.
Yeah, let me pull up the...
Sorry, thank you.
Nope, that's all right. I gotta go. So I think some of the conversations related to that really stemmed from that direct service delivery and having a provider, basically jump-starting a provider in the community to provide behavioral health services that are not otherwise, it fills a gap that the hospital has. And so again, I think that really focused on kind of that direct service delivery and being able to help folks in crisis. I think that was really much of the conversation around both the request from St. Catherine's, but also the request from Compass. Those were the two highest dollar amount that were being recommended to you all for consideration. And a lot of that conversation was really focusing on that being able to provide services to folks in crisis while they're in crisis. Whereas some of the other ones, again, kind of that indirect moving upstream, trying to do more of that prevention work. This was an opportunity, I think, that the committee sought to provide that direct services and have that direct service delivery model.
Yeah, so I would agree with funding positions if we knew they were sustainable. But this is an assumption of the committee that they're going to jumpstart a position. But when I read through their application, I didn't see any continued funding for the position, and there's a lot of startup costs. And this is a $128,000 application. I'm saying a lot of startup costs. So there's a lot of dollars going into a position. What if it disappears in a year? There's other organizations, that I think have, like Compass Behavioral Health, their application was kind of the same thing. They are direct provider. I said they're doing the same thing that St. Catherine's wants to do. They're already doing that, and they've been pretty successful. So, yeah, I guess, again, I want to follow the rubric scoring and fund the dollars that way.
Any other questions? Commissioner Landgraf, you have anything?
So I think it's hard to come back to some of these programs and try to bring up to them why a program that's 2 points away from a perfect score according to the rubric didn't get funded over a program that's 10 points lower. I mean, that's about a third of the points on this rubric scale. I think it really is kind of to Commissioner Unruh and Commissioner Ortiz's point. We have this rubric for a reason. I get the idea of deviating somewhat from it at certain points just based off the funding amounts as well, though. But I feel like to me, this is really pushing away from the rubric instead of somewhat varying away. Also, I just have the question on, we were talking about redoing the first one, the alignment to KSA 7941 AA04. How exactly would that work in the future? Would it be, I really don't know how you do it, to be honest with you. To me, it feels pretty, it meets it or it doesn't meet it. And then in between, it'd be pretty much a gray scale. Would you just do a 3-point? Would you do a 2-point? Like, how exactly? To me, that's kind of a question too.
Yeah, so I short answer is I don't know. I think there's a couple different options. I think one option could be looking at it from if you're providing direct services, you're more on the 5 end of the scale. If you're providing indirect services, you're more on the 1 end of the scale. There's also different, so that could be one option. Another option could be in state statute, it talks about prevention, education, intervention. So we could also treat it kind of like we did with the city commission goals to say, these are the general buckets that funds can be used for that still meet state statute. The more of those things that you can tie your program to, the higher the score in this area could be. So I think there's a couple different ways, depending on the direction that you all have, that we could do that. I would, like I mentioned, the committee discussion very much focused on kind of the direct versus indirect service delivery. So that could certainly be an option, as well as kind of parsing out the different elements of state statute.
Yeah, because I see where you're saying that almost all of these, they align with that state statute, but if it's not direct or indirect. And again, this idea, I think, if you said, hey, how many more of these points are you hitting? But most of these, I'd have to go through again to see which ones didn't. I mean, there's a few I would anticipate don't, but I mean, most of these meet that first criteria. As far as if you don't hold it toward direct services. If you hold it toward indirect, almost all of these except maybe 2, I think, if I'm thinking back reading through the applications. So I think then they would at least receive 5 points to know that, hey, your application was verified or accepted. But again, I think that's where, that you've explained they're going to understand that, hey, this is why, we didn't take any further because we didn't feel that your application met the state standard. Now, but again, with your explanation of the state standard, obviously I think most of them do.
Yeah.
Again, I'd like to thank the committee for their work. I mean, I know I was visiting earlier with Matt about this, and it's kind of like, when we started the downtown fund, it took us a couple of tries to get the matrix and figure out how we wanted to see that function and everything. I mean, this is another try at making another matrix and trying to make it work. Trying to understand, and like Matt said, it's this group of people trying to figure out and say, well, this is our best thinking, bringing it back to the commission, and the commission's going, well, we're trying, this is our best thinking. So how do you mesh the two together and come up with trying to make a quality product, fund the services in the community that do the best and provide the best need in the community? So again, thank you for your input on where the committee was thinking, because I kept reading through that and trying to figure out, I was saying, well, here's the top scores, but it's not aligning. And then I was trying to figure out how they came up with how they funded it and everything, and that gave me a better, after you discussed what they talked about. So, any other questions or concerns?
I appreciate the scoring. I think it was really well done. I think that's what the rubric was. I thought the rubric was really well written. And that they used it for scoring, I think that helped me a lot understand, this idea that now you had some delineation. And so you saw the value of the project. So I agree. I think the subcommittee did an awesome job with the rubric. I do think it's moving more toward the goal of being, helping everyone understand who makes an application, where they were strong and where they weren't. And so the next application, hopefully they can improve their application or, figure out what they need to do differently. So.
Or modify the rubric just slightly from input from the commission on where we're at. I mean, ultimately, and it was like Matt said, ultimately it's the commission's, it's our decision on how it gets funded. So it was just the help of the committee on, like any of our advisory boards, they advise and we make the final decision. Any other questions or comments for Danielle? Entertain a motion on this item then. Or do we want to discuss further on what we want to see or how to move forward on this?
Well, I know we do have two applicants. I mean, in the gallery. No, we don't have to hear from them if you don't want to. But I mean, I would make a motion, and I can't read this. It's so. I don't have my cheaters, so.
What are you reading?
From Commissioner Ortiz, I move that we follow the recommendations provided by Commissioner Ortiz so that the scoring and the award matches.
To allocate funding for the top 5 scoring applicants according to the original rubric with 35 to score of 35, 33, 33, 31, and 30.
Yep.
With the following scored award amounts of $7,500, $50,000, $5,000, $75,000, and $62,500.
Yep.
That's your motion?
That's my motion. Yeah, thank you for reading that. So I'm sorry I couldn't.
Not a problem. That's why I have trifocals.
Oh, wow.
Is there a second to that motion? No second? That motion dies for lack of a second motion. Entertain a motion on something else then, or other discussion to move us forward on this. I'll make a motion that we approve the recommendations to award the 4 applicants as recommended by the United Way Board Subcommittee. Is there a second on that? No second on that? That dies of lack of a second for that motion. Would we want to, have we table this or come back to?
To the next commission meeting.
We can do that. But what do we want to do in the meantime? So we table it for what? If we do table it?
Well, I guess we've heard the understanding now that we understand, and I think I would like a little bit of time to think about if we've not communicated accurately. Our desire as a commission, I think the subcommittee narrowing and changing the focus, I think it's fine if we say, oh, hey, would you choose direct providers or those kind of things, I think that works. But I think where a committee says direct or indirect and they make that decision, to me, I think the application should stand on its own. And that's why I think, and then if we knew that if we want to say, okay, yeah, let's go with a direct, then their recommendations make sense. But if we say these applications are open to both direct and indirect, then I think that I don't think there's really anything else we need to do other than. I said either we follow the rubric or we follow their recommendations based upon kind of leapfrogging over. These different applications with the understanding that they thought about direct service providers. But I think the danger in this direct service provider situation is that, again, we're providing funding positions, and, I think the AFAC funds can do that, but without sustainability, I mean, positions are very hard to continue. So I don't know how you table something for, other than to have Commissioner Ortiz here for additional discussion. I mean, that's the only reason you table, because we don't have we have a quorum, but we don't have our full commission, so.
So I think there is a lot of value in this whole discussion alone, but I would think that at the end of the day, like, the governing body is the one who offered the rubric, and I think that's kind of the conflicting piece here, is that we were the ones that offer this rubric, and I wonder if, like, this AFAC isn't just going to go away. Like, we're going to have more AFAC funding in the future, and I think just offering this here can provide value for our community regardless. And so I would actually make the motion to award AFAC grant funding for the highest 5 scores with their respective scored award that Commissioner Ortiz has written down.
Yeah,
So that was the same.
That's the motion I just offered. Well,
But it
what
died,
you could,
so-
what we could do though is, because St. Catherine's, without having their full funding, they might not be able to do so we could offer the top 4. We'd have $62,500 left over. That could roll back into that, and then again, because if you can't fully fund something without really knowing, so that could be an option where you fund the top 4, because the top 4 all of them are fully funded. And then the only one wouldn't be funded would be St. Catherine's, in the sense that is the $62,000, which is almost half of what they requested. Mm-hmm. So maybe funding the top 4, and then I appreciate your discussion on that, Commissioner Nguyen, as far as, but I think that way the top 4 were fully funded, so we know that they could carry out their application. And then with the St. Catherine's, with it being only half, I don't think you could. Because it's half of what they really need, and if it's a startup position, half just isn't going to cut it. Knowing that we could roll those dollars in, you'd have more for AFAC in the next grant cycle, or that you could actually award.
Yeah, that's okay.
So would you want to do that motion?
Well, let's have my motion die first, and then we'll...
Okay. It was pretty much the exact same motion that Commissioner Unruh did for the first motion.
Correct.
Is there a second on that motion on the second time around? None. That died for lack of a second motion. Okay. Guys, this is how democracy works. You're seeing it live in action, so great time to show up for a city commission meeting.
So I move that we approve the top 4, fully fund the top 4, highest score, according to the matrix, the highest scores on the top 4, because they're fully funded. And the Gardens of the Arts at
500.
7,500, yeah. ACRF Management Services at 50,000, Kansas Children's Service League at 5,000, and Compass Behavioral Health at 75,000.
Yes, thank you.
There's been a motion to approve the top 4 scores of 7,500, 50,000, 5,000, 75,000. Is there a second to that motion?
So my issue a little bit on this motion is just the fact that in the future, are we going to, on this rubric, start to say, if your program is not fully funded, we're just not going to consider it based off the scoring as well? That's kind of where I get to the
I
issue.
know, that's hard too, yeah.
Even on the current one with the amount requested and amount recommended, it's still, it's a lot closer for St. Catherine's, but it's still less than what they requested, as well as the city of Holcomb's, it's about half of what they requested as well. So to me, it kind of gets to that issue. I'd almost want something, almost like to be able to reach out to St. Catherine's and say, is this 62,500 enough for you to be able to continue on with your program? If so, we'll grant it. If not, then there's no point in us gifting them the 62,500, because there's no way this can solve the issue.
And I can give some context to why the recommended amount is different than the requested amount. The subcommittee looked at the budget that was provided, and there was a discrepancy between the number that they had on the cover page, which is kind of the quick number that we go and grab the fund numbers from, and the budget. The budgeted amount was the $114,410.
So it-
That
so
was
it'd be
the amount
less.
that
Yeah, I
the
mean,
subcommittee recommended.
Because you could ask them if they wanted that, and then if they didn't, they could always just say that's not enough to go, but then that would be the original motion to
Yeah.
approve all.
I don't think it'd quite be the original motion. It'd be the original motion with the amended added, or the addition of the potential of that money coming back type of a thing. With that little caveat, getting clarification from St. Catherine's.
Okay, but there is a motion on the table of the top 4 scores at their full funding, with the top score going down to the 4th highest score in the rubric. There is a motion. Is there a second to that motion?
I second.
There is a second. Any discussion on that motion? All in favor say aye.
Aye.
Opposed, nay.
Nay.
That item passed.
Yes, yes, yes.
Yes, yes,
No?
yes.
Okay.
Nay. Again, like to thank the committee for their help on this. Maybe have a little more discussion on how the rubric's set up, and we can move forward on it, but good discussion. Thank you.
I'd also just like to add, I think it'd be really helpful for us to get kind of a full feedback from the subcommittee, exactly what they thought of our rubric as well. It's kind of detailed, like we're getting some of it in the commissioner and the agenda item, and we also got some of it from Danielle, but I think having a full kind of breakdown about their opinion of it would be very helpful for us as well.
We can do that.
If it's working for them and it's not what their recommendations, I mean, I think there are, yep.
Thank you. 12B, the governing body is asked to consider and approve an appointment to the Community Health Advisory Board. Danielle.
The Community Health Advisory Board is made up of 9 members appointed by the governing body. The board is charged with advising the governing body on policy matters and programs as they relate to community health and the physical environment, and making funding recommendations for the community grant. Currently, there is 1 vacant position on the board. The Community Health Advisory Board met on October 14th of 2025 and recommended appointing Alex Titus to fill the unexpired term that will end December 31st of 2027. 2 alternatives before you. The first, the governing body may appoint Alex Titus to fill the current vacancy and serve on the Community Health Advisory Board until December 31st, 2027, or the governing body may not appoint Alex Titus to fill the current vacancy and provide staff with alternative direction. The Community Health Advisory Board recommends the governing body appoint Alex Titus to serve to fill the current vacant term to serve on the Community Health Advisory Board until December 31st of 2027. And there's no fiscal impact.
Yeah, I appreciate you providing that information about our application, and so that was really, she's very qualified, so.
Entertain a motion on this item.
I move we appoint Alex Titus to fill the current vacancy and serve on the Community Health Advisory Board until December 31st, 2027.
There's been a motion. Is there a second?
Second.
There's been a second. Any discussion on this item? None being, all in favor say aye.
Aye.
Opposed, nay. That item passed.
Thank you.
12C, the governing body is asked to consider and approve an engineering services task order from professional engineering consultants to evaluate the condition of the East Garden Village public water supply and sanitary sewer systems for a fee of $10,000. Fred?
Good afternoon, Mayor and Commissioners. On October 4th, staff presented a petition to the governing body from Robert Martin, representing Western Kansas Housing LLC, requesting that the city assume operation of the public water supply and sewer collection system in East Garden Village. Staff recommended to the governing body at that meeting a number of items that should be considered to provide a complete analysis of the potential risks and benefits of assuming operation. The governing body directed staff to provide information at a future meeting regarding the cost of an investigation and provide information and a recommendation regarding the petition. Staff reached out to PEC to provide an engineering services task order for consideration. The task order is attached with this agenda item today, and if the governing body chooses to direct staff to execute this task order, PEC will complete a preliminary system evaluation and recommendations report that would consist of the following tasks. Pre-design visit to assess existing conditions, participate in a kickoff meeting to discuss the project scope with stakeholders, attend one progress design meeting with the city, develop a request for information from the owner of East Garden Village system to obtain information and mapping of the existing systems, conduct a preliminary review of the existing system, and evaluate system compliance with Kansas Department of Health and Environment regulations for public infrastructure. Provide recommendations based on potential risks for additional field services needed to further evaluate system conditions. And as can be determined from the initial evaluation, provide recommendations for improvements and an estimate of probable construction costs. The cost of the task design described in the task order will be billed according to PEC's rate schedule with a fee not to exceed $10,000. And based on the report from PEC, the city may need to consider additional services to complete the investigation. Those services may be procured by the city through a trusted vendor or through a supplemental agreement with PEC. If approved, the report will be completed 6 weeks after PEC received notice to proceed. Alternatives for the governing body may choose to approve an engineering services task order from PEC to evaluate the condition of the East Garden Village public water supply and sanitary sewer systems for a fee of $10,000. The governing body may choose not to approve the engineering services task order from PEC and decline the petition from Robert Martin, representing Western Kansas Housing LLC. Or the governing body may choose to direct staff to provide an alternate recommendation at a future meeting. Staff recommends alternative 1 if the governing body chooses to continue investigation of the petition from Robert Martin. If approved, the project will be funded from water sundry engineering fees. The GL is listed there for your reference, and the available balance of that line item is $52,571.43. And the task order is attached for your reference as well.
Any questions for Fred?
Yeah, so since this request is being made by Robert Martin, representing Western Kansas Housing LLC, I mean, I understand that because we're protecting ourselves, is it not something that we can bill back to him? Because again, this idea that we are, if we move forward, then we'll be providing those services, or. So I've never seen that again, where someone makes a request and then I mean, I know it feels like a protection measure for our part. Is that how you see it, Fred, or?
I think, my opinion is it would be in our best interest to professionally evaluate that system in order to facilitate a discussion regarding whether the city wants to resume operation or not. I think if there was a desire to recuperate some of those costs, then that would be part of the further discussion, perhaps.
I mean, I thought the fee was very reasonable for what you've laid out that they're going to do, so, yeah. And that was my only question.
Any other questions? Entertain a motion on this item.
I move we approve option number 1.
There's been a motion to approve the approval of the services from PEC on evaluation of condition of the East Garden Village public water supply and sanitary sewer systems for a fee of $10,000. Is there a second to that?
I second.
There's been a second. Any discussion on this item? None being, all in favor say aye.
Aye.
Opposed, nay. That item passed.
Thank you.
Thank you.
That takes care of all the new business items. The consent agenda item, if you don't want to pull any of the items off, would be 13A through 13C.
Just ask if anybody from the public is here on any of the nuisance items. I make a motion that we approve items 13A through 13C.
Second.
There's been a second. Any discussion on this item? None being, all in favor say aye.
Aye.
Opposed, nay. That item passed. Commissioner reports. Commissioner Unruh.
So I know that fall is here, so this is really exciting. I just want to remind everybody to make sure you disconnect your hoses with temperatures dropping. Unfortunately, I've learned the hard way, and so I don't want you to, and so this is that time of the year where you have to be very careful about watering. I really appreciated the pre-meeting. I think it's really interesting. I know water is something that is it is really so precious here in western Kansas, and in how we manage the water. I really was excited to see that the city is continuing to do, our management is getting better and better. I know there's several things that we've done over these last several years. Garden Rapids is one of those big items, I know, for that. And then I really appreciate the opportunities that our water department are presenting for further conservation. So I think they're doing an excellent job. Having someone at the helm like Fred is and all of the different things he has to know, it's amazing. So, Fred, I really appreciate your expertise. I think it really bodes well for us as a city. I know tonight there is a very exciting Battle of the Bands. I don't know if they call it a Battle of the Bands, but there's the Western Kansas Athletic WAC is going to be tonight at the Garden City High School, and so we're going to be out there. I hope it's chilly because I'm expecting to get some hot chocolate, so that'll be exciting. And then with lots of things happening, there's been some really exciting things happening these last several weeks, and so again, this idea of really just want to make sure that we're taking care of our residents, our citizens. I really appreciate all the work for our first responders. I know that the communication department keeps us informed where we need to not be, and also it just reminds me to pray for our first responders. I know there's lots of things that happen, and I'm so glad we have people that are there. And with that, that's my report.
Thank you. Commissioner Landgraf.
So I just want to start by talking about the pre-meeting. I think it was a great pre-meeting by Fred. I just want to say thank you to all of the water staff for everything that they do. It's pretty cool being able to see that water use is down the past 5 years in Garden City, and also how much the city department has also been able to cut down, and also being able to get updates on future water projects as well. I was also able to attend the State of the City address. I just want to say fantastic job by Mayor Cessna, and then also a fantastic job by City Manager Matt Allen as well. Last Tuesday, I was able to attend the KDOT local consult meeting in Liberal. I think it was good being able to go to KDOT and be able to voice our opinions on potential future projects, since these future projects greatly impact Garden City. And then also, it was brought to my attention concerns about the street drainage around the 1900 block of Harding Avenue. So I just wanted to bring that forward that concern and bring it to staff's attention.
Okay, thank you.
Thank you. Commissioner Nguyen.
Yeah, so for the high schoolers that are here, thank you, Mrs. Bernfin, for taking them and for all the work that you do to have our youth have an opportunity for civic engagement. And as you can see up here, it's kind of boring. Like we sit up here, we say yes or no, and sometimes those yeses or no don't make a lot of sense if you're not in the know. And so I'm really grateful that you're coming here to be in the know, because there is a lot of important decisions that were made today, and some of them are sometimes really hard to all come to one decision as a governing body. Earlier this month, I did go to the League of Kansas Municipalities annual conference, and congratulations to Mayor Cessna for being the president this year and for all the work that he's done for the crew. And then I was also able to get an update on the legislative situation that we have and the commerce across Kansas, and it's kind of exciting to be known that there's a lot of moving parts in Kansas, and that Garden City is also kind of on that trend with the rest of the region. And I also attended the wine tasting right after that. Matt and Alan and I were chatting up, watching the KU football game, and wow, lots of drinks served for us there. State of the City address, a lot of growth in our community and a lot of amazing things that are coming to fruition year after year. And I also had the opportunity to offer a speech for the JAG installation initiation at the high school. And for a class there, I was very impressed that they had about 80 students, and there were over 60 students that attended that ceremony after class. And I'm like, wow, these students are starting to care a lot more about what their future looks like. And also, again, thank you to United Way and their committee for offering to us, taking the time and painting this broader picture that these applicants are more than just the scoring rubric on itself, and I'm very appreciative of that.
Thank you. Just kind of echoing what all the other commissioners noted, just want to remind everybody there is an election coming up, so just be mindful that if you, I know that it's getting put out there through social media as well as the Telegram, the newspaper, and other media sources, but there are extended hours for voting at the county administrative building, as well as on November 4th is election day. So just want to remind everybody that that's coming around the corner. Make your voices heard. Also, just want to thank the high school students for being in attendance today. We are working to have a meeting at the high school on December 2nd. So that'll be good. That's kind of one of our commission goals, and I know that's one of the League of Kansas Municipality goals, is to get more civic engagement for young people, and we're really highlighting that here in the community of Garden City. On that, that's all I've got. Meeting adjourned. Thank you.